Do you still remember Emergency in 1972? The show once electrified television with its breathless rescue missions at Station 51. Now, 53 years later, that cast has changed in ways almost impossible to believe. Some are gone forever, some are quietly battling illness, and only a few live simple lives away from the spotlight. So, who is still here, and who has been lost after more than half a century? Let's find out. Bobby Troup, as Dr. Joe. Early. Bobby Troup was born on October 18, 1918, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, when he appeared in Emergency. In 1972, he was 54 years old, portraying the calm neurologist Dr. Joe Early, a role enriched by the lifetime experience of a jazz musician. The sweet chemistry between him and Julie London, his real-life wife, made audiences believe they were a couple straight out of Rampart Hospital itself. But behind the lights, his life carried darker tones. Troup had lived in the haze of cigarettes, strong liquor, and late nights in jazz clubs since the 1940s, leaving him with chronic heart disease. His first marriage collapsed under the strain of artistic life, distancing him from his 5 children. It wasn't until he met Julie that he found stability, but the joy didn't last. In 1995, he watched her suffer a stroke that left her bedridden. For 5 years, Bobby became both her emotional anchor and a man drowning in despair. He once admitted, "When Julie died, I lost half my soul." The pain wasn't only from her illness, but also from knowing that his own heart problems hung over him like a shadow. At the same time, his jazz friends passed away one by one, leaving an emptiness impossible to fill. On February 7, 1999, Bobby Troup collapsed from a heart attack at UCLA Medical Center, ironically, so much like Rampart Hospital on screen. He was 80 years old, passing away just 1 year before Julie. His estate was then worth about $5 million, nearly $8 million in 2025 value, thanks to royalties from his timeless song Route 66 and his earnings from Emergency. He left behind immortal music, but also a loneliness that never truly healed. Julie London, as Dixie McCall. Julie London was born on September 26, 1926, in Santa Rosa, California. When she joined Emergency, in 1972, she was 46 years old, playing head nurse Dixie McCall, the alluring but tough woman who held life and death together in the emergency room. This role brought the image of a music star into television and left a strong impression of resilience in the middle of crisis. But off-screen, Julie lived a fractured life. She married Jack Webb in 1947. But the marriage fell apart in 1954 due to betrayal. Later, love with Bobby Troup gave her peace, but it also meant years of watching the man she loved waste away from illness. Julie herself endured even more brutally. Her habit of smoking since her teenage years, more than 2 packs a day, slowly destroyed her health and the husky, seductive voice that had made "Cry Me a River" legendary. In 1995, just after retreating from the spotlight, she suffered a massive stroke that left her paralyzed on one side and robbed her of speech. The glamorous star image vanished, replaced by a helpless woman dependent on Bobby Troup in their small home in Encino. In her final years, Hollywood almost completely forgot her, remembered only by old fans through her records and surviving episodes. Julie London died on October 18, 2000. At the age of 74, just weeks after her last birthday. She passed from respiratory complications and was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, alongside many legends of her era. Her estate was estimated at around $10 million at the time, nearly $12 million in 2025 value, thanks to royalties from her music and Emergency. A tragic ending for a once dazzling star. Cigarettes had taken everything away. Tim Donnelly as fireman Chet Kelly. Tim Donnelly was born on July 13, 1944 in Los Angeles, California. When he joined Emergency, In 1972, he was only 28 years old, playing firefighter Chet Kelly, a prankster who loved to crack jokes and stir up mischief to relieve the pressure at Station 51. The character quickly became a comedic highlight, turning Donnelly into a familiar face for millions of television viewers. But in real life, Donnelly's life was a string of tragedies. Addicted to cocaine during the 1980s, he lost his entire fortune, went through 2 failed marriages, and lost custody of his children. His downward spiral led to an arrest in 1995 for driving under the influence, which cost him a film contract and pushed him into a reclusive life. Though he occasionally reappeared at emergency fan reunions, behind the smile was a loneliness and sense of failure he could not hide. In 2010, after his last divorce, he relapsed into substance abuse. By 2021, Donnelly was forced to undergo heart valve replacement surgery, but complications from infection took his life. On September 17, 2021, Tim Donnelly passed away at his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the age of 77, a bitter irony for the man who once played a firefighter, only to be powerless against a medical emergency of his own. He left behind a modest estate, estimated at $1.5 million at the time of his death, worth about $2 million in 2025, mainly from his salary on Emergency, and income from fan reunions. His funeral was held privately, closing the life of an artist who once brought laughter on screen while hiding unbearable pain off stage. William Boyett as Battalion Chief Mechanic. William Boyett was born on January 3, 1927 in Burbank, California, when he joined Emergency. In 1972, he was 45 years old, playing Chief Mechanic, the tough, principled commander. On screen, his image was inseparable from strength, always making decisive calls in life-or-death moments. But off-screen, Boyett carried a very different tragedy. He had been addicted to cigarettes since World War II, and that habit left devastating consequences. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, plagued him for many years. The tragedy deepened when, in 1990, his beloved wife died of cancer, leaving him alone in a small California home as his career slowly faded into the past. In his final years, Boyett's health declined severely. The commanding figure seen on screen stood in stark contrast to the frail old man who was hospitalized repeatedly for breathing difficulties. Even though he had withdrawn from Hollywood, audiences still remembered him for his many roles as policemen and military officers. William Boyett died on December 29, 2004, in Mission Hills, California, at the age of 77, from acute pneumonia. He left behind a modest estate, estimated at $1.5 million in 2025 value. His passing closed the life of an actor who once appeared so authoritative on screen, but lived quietly and alone behind the scenes. Michael Norell as Captain Hank Stanley. Michael Norell was born on October 4, 1937, in Tecumseh, Michigan. When he appeared in Emergency. In 1972, he was 35 years old, playing Captain Hank Stanley, the calm and steady commander of Station 51, who always maintained composure, no matter the situation. He became a symbol of exemplary leadership and a figure audiences deeply connected with throughout the 1970s. Behind that strong on-screen persona, however, was a man under immense pressure. In addition to acting, Norell wrote and produced more than 20 emergency scripts, which gradually drained his energy over the years. By 1980, his marriage had collapsed as work consumed all of his time, creating distance between him and his children. He spent his life avoiding Hollywood scandals, but that very private lifestyle turned his later years into a period of isolation. In his final years, Norell continued writing diligently, preparing a memoir to recount the behind-the-scenes story of Emergency. Yet his health steadily declined due to heart disease. The repeated loss of friends and colleagues deepened his sadness, making the image of the unbeatable commander on screen stand in stark contrast to a fragile reality. Michael Norell died on May 12, 2023, in Huntington, Pennsylvania, at the age of 85 from heart failure. He left behind an estate estimated at around $4 million as of 2025, earned mainly through his work as a writer and producer. Vince Howard as officer. Vince Howard. Vince Howard was born on April 2, 1930 in Newport, Rhode Island. When he appeared in Emergency, in 1972, he was 42 years old, playing police officer Vince Howard across 65 episodes. With his serious demeanor, his character became a symbol of composure and responsibility, adding authenticity to the series. In real life, Howard avoided scandals and controversies, but his relentless dedication to work came at a cost. He continuously took on roles in both television and film, hardly ever resting. This exhausting lifestyle caused his health to decline rapidly after his role in Lethal Weapon 3 in the early 1990s. Even so, he left behind an impressive career. Beyond Emergency, Howard appeared in The Twilight Zone and Perry Mason, becoming a familiar supporting face on American television for decades. He was never a major star, but he embodied the kind of actor who was reliable wherever he went, always bringing credibility to every production. On July 18, 2002, Vince Howard died at his home at the age of 72 from natural causes. His estate was estimated at around $1 million in 2025 value, primarily from his television work. His funeral was quiet, but in the hearts of fans, the image of Officer Vince Howard remains a lasting symbol of duty and responsibility. Art Ballinger as Chief Conrad. Art Ballinger was born on February 4, 1915, in Chicago, Illinois. In 1972, at the age of 57, he played Chief Conrad in Emergency, a recurring character who appeared in about 30 episodes. He was portrayed as a measured leader, representing discipline and principle within the fire department. Though not a major role, it helped provide the show with a foundation of seriousness. Unlike many of his colleagues, Ballinger's life carried little drama. There were no scandals, addictions, or tumultuous affairs. He came from radio, later transitioned to television, and earned a reputation as a disciplined professional worker. The only force that truly overcame him was time itself. After retirement, he lived quietly, rarely appearing in public, and devoted his days to family. In his twilight years, Ballinger watched as many of his Emergency colleagues passed away, which made him withdraw even further into solitude. Though he never left as strong a mark as the lead roles, his portrayal of Chief Conrad clearly embodied the gatekeeper spirit of discipline that anchored NBC's classic series. Art Ballinger died on June 10, 2011, at the age of 96 from natural causes. He outlived most of his co-stars, leaving behind an estate estimated at around $2 million in 2025 value, largely from his long career in television. His funeral was simple, fitting for such a reserved man, leaving behind memories of Chief Conrad, a stern, quiet presence who was nonetheless indispensable to Emergency in its heyday. Ron Pinkard as Dr. Mike Morton. Ron Pinkard was born on March 22, 1942, in Waltz, Arkansas. When he joined Emergency, in 1972, he was only 30 years old, taking on the role of Dr. Mike Morton, a familiar face in 84 episodes, always appearing serious, professional, and serving as the medical anchor for the Station 51 fire crew. This character won him the love of audiences and tied him closely to the series for nearly a decade. But behind the lights, Pinkard's life was not as complete as his role suggested. Years of heavy smoking left devastating consequences, leading him to develop metastatic thyroid cancer. The disease quickly ravaged his health, draining both his body and spirit, and condemned him to long days in the hospital rather than continuing his contributions to the arts. Despite the pain, Pinkard was admired by friends and colleagues for his resilience. Yet human strength has its limits. The tumor spread, transforming him from a doctor saving lives on screen into a powerless patient in reality. This contrast made his death all the more tragic, especially for viewers who once saw him as a symbol of hope. Ron Pinkard passed away on June 16, 2006, at the age of 64. He was laid to rest quietly, without fanfare, surrounded only by family and close friends. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at around $800,000, modest by 2025 standards, earned mostly through his television acting career. His greatest legacy remains the image of Dr. Morton, the steadfast doctor audiences will never forget. Marco Lopez as firefighter. Marco Lopez. Marco Lopez was born on January 1, 1947, in Los Angeles, California, when he joined Emergency. In 1972, he was only 25 years old, playing firefighter Marco Lopez in nearly 100 episodes. His character stood out with witty humor, often delivering dry, sarcastic remarks about food or everyday situations. This gave Station 51 its own flavor and also represented cultural diversity within the cast. But Lopez's real life was not as warm as it appeared on screen. He had been a heavy smoker since his teenage years, a habit that lasted for decades, and ultimately led to stage 4 lung cancer, diagnosed in 2018. Alongside this came a string of marital tragedies: 3 marriages, 2 divorces, the first costing him custody of his only daughter due to his relentless filming schedule, and the second collapsing under the weight of his alcoholism. At a fan gathering in 2010, he bitterly admitted, "I drank to forget the real-life rescues, but it ended up taking my family away." After the success of Emergency, Lopez's career quickly stalled. He appeared sporadically in shows like Knight Rider and Magnum P.Y. before withdrawing completely. In his final years, Lopez lived reclusively in Palm Springs, refusing reunion events with castmates out of shame for his frail, chemotherapy-worn body. Marco Lopez died on September 27, 2021, at the age of 74, after 3 grueling years battling lung cancer. He passed quietly in the arms of his daughter, who cared for him until the very end. His estate was valued at around $1.2 million at the time of his death, about $1.8 million in 2025, coming mainly from Emergency DVD royalties and a small real estate holding. There was no lavish funeral, but his legacy remains as the witty firefighter who bonded with audiences throughout the 1970s, now made even more haunting by his lonely and painful end. Gary Crosby as Tom Wheeler. Gary Crosby was born on June 27, 1933, in Los Angeles. In 1972, at age 39, he appeared in Emergency as Tom Wheeler, a supporting character who drew attention thanks to his confident demeanor. As the eldest son of legend Bing Crosby, Gary was once expected to carry on his father's fame. Yet behind the spotlight, Gary carried a painful childhood. He publicly accused his father of abuse, leaving psychological scars that never fully healed. As an adult, he fell heavily into drinking, endured multiple failed marriages, and saw a career that never reached the heights many expected of him. These self-destructive habits gradually pulled him into a spiral of illness. Lung cancer became the final consequence of decades of smoking. Despite treatment efforts, the disease refused to let go, quickly draining his strength. The image of Gary on screen stood in complete contrast to the fractured man he was in real life, broken by family, marriage, and health alike. On August 24, 1995, Gary Crosby died at the age of 62. His estate was estimated at around $2 million at the time, equivalent to nearly $3 million in 2025, earned mainly from recordings and royalties tied to the Crosby family name. His funeral was held privately, but the echoes of his life remained controversial. The son of a legend who lived and died in the shadow of his own family tragedy. John Wheeler as dispatcher. Sam Lanier. John Wheeler was born on December 8, 1931. When he joined Emergency, in 1972, he was 41 years old, playing Sam Lanier, the dispatcher who was the invisible yet vital bridge between emergency calls and the Station 51 fire crew. Though his role was quiet, it played a key part in maintaining the show's tense rhythm across many episodes. Wheeler's life, however, took a different turn after retirement. Following years of steady work, his health declined rapidly. There were no scandals, no controversies, but a silent illness struck without warning. He suffered a stroke shortly after leaving the spotlight, turning his final years into a brief, sorrowful time for his family. His sudden passing shocked fans. The man once identified with the calm voice beginning with Station 51 had gone silent forever. Wheeler never had the chance to write a memoir or leave behind much beyond emergency, but his dedication was remembered by colleagues as proof of quiet commitment. John Wheeler died on May 21, 1997, at the age of 65, from a stroke. His estate was modest, about $500,000 in 2025 value. There was no elaborate funeral. He was buried simply, in the same way he lived, quietly but steadfastly, leaving a small yet unforgettable mark on the hearts of emergency fans. Jan Arvan as Bert Martin. Jan Arvan was born on October 10, 1912. When he appeared in Emergency, in 1972, he was already 60 years old and featured in only about 5 episodes as Bert Martin. Though just a guest character, he left an impression with his natural, down-to-earth acting, adding to the everyday realism that the show aimed to capture. Still, Arvan's career, already modest, was further cut short by health problems. As age advanced, he had fewer opportunities, while a long-standing heart condition loomed over his life. For an actor who was never a household name, facing the reality of a failing heart was a quiet tragedy. Nevertheless, Arvan managed to leave his mark in a few notable films. He appeared in Disney's adventure 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954, and in The Prisoner of Zenda, 1952. These roles, while not leading parts, earned him recognition as a reliable supporting actor, able to bring authenticity and depth to major Hollywood productions. On May 24, 1979, he died of a heart attack at the age of 66. John Arvan left behind a modest estate, valued at around $400,000 in 2025 terms. His passing was quiet, but the works he contributed to remain as proof of a short yet valuable career. Ross Elliot, as foreman. Ross Elliot was born on June 18, 1917. When he joined Emergency. In 1972, he was 55 years old and appeared in about 15 episodes as foreman, a supporting character who brought authenticity to the series. On screen, Elliot's presence was modest but perfectly aligned with the everyday realism the show sought to portray. But behind the screen lay a life filled with hardship. Never blessed with robust health, Elliot began facing cancer toward the end of his career. As his illness advanced, he withdrew more and more, eventually living in a nursing home where he spent his final, weary days, far removed from the calm, solid figure audiences remembered. Still, his career extended well beyond Emergency. Elliot left a lasting mark in the Twilight Zone, particularly in the classic 1960 episode The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, considered one of the greatest in television history. He also appeared frequently in Perry Mason. Though often cast in supporting parts, he was admired for filling the gaps in every production with skill and credibility. On August 12, 1999, Ross Elliot died at the age of 82 after years of battling cancer. His estate was modest, about $600,000 in 2025 value. It was a quiet end for a gentle actor, but his performances are still remembered as the glue that held together some of television's most classic works. Virginia Gregg as Wilma Jacobs. Virginia Gregg was born on March 26, 1916, when she appeared in Emergency. In 1972, she was 56 years old and played Wilma Jacobs, appearing in around 20 episodes. With her distinctive voice and sharp features, Gregg gave the show a unique touch, making the character of Jacobs unforgettable to audiences. However, behind her impressive career was a self-destructive habit. Gregg smoked for decades, and lung cancer eventually robbed her of both her health and her voice, the priceless instrument that had once made her famous as the voice of Norman Bates's mother in Psycho, 1960. The bitter irony was that the very voice that turned her into a legend was silenced by illness. Throughout her career, Gregg appeared in more than 40 films and hundreds of television episodes. Beyond Psycho, she was remembered for her roles in Dragnet and Gunsmoke, two of the most iconic American TV series. Her versatility and emotionally rich voice made her one of the most trusted supporting actresses for directors during the 1950s through the 1970s. Virginia Gregg died on September 15, 1986, at the age of 70, from lung cancer. She left behind an estate estimated at about $1 million in 2025 value. Her funeral was simple, but her artistic legacy, from Psycho to Dragnet, remains deeply etched in the memory of audiences, a testament to a talent cut down too soon by disease. Kenneth Tobey, as Captain Gordon Trigg. Kenneth Tobey was born on March 23, 1917. In 1972, at the age of 55, he joined Emergency playing Captain Gordon Trigg in about 10 episodes. His character appeared as a strict commander, always maintaining discipline in life-or-death situations. But Tobey was remembered for much more than Emergency. Earlier in his career, he rose to fame in the classic science fiction film The Thing from Another World, 1951, where he played the lead role and became the face of the golden age of sci-fi cinema. He also appeared in The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1953, a landmark work that laid the foundation for the monster movie genre. These two films cemented Tobey as a pop culture icon, even though his later career was typecast into military and police roles. As he grew older, Tobey continued appearing in well-known series such as Perry Mason and Star Trek, but his health gradually declined. He lived a simple, quiet life, far from Hollywood's bright lights. Behind the commanding presence he showed on screen was a man battling the chronic illnesses of old age. On December 22, 2002, Kenneth Tobey died at the age of 85. His estate was estimated at about $1.2 million in 2025 value, mainly from royalties and his earlier roles. His funeral was held quietly, but whenever people look back on The Thing or the early years of science fiction cinema, Tobey's name remains an inseparable part of that legacy. Robert Fuller, as Dr. Kelly Brackett. Robert Fuller was born on July 29, 1933, in Troy, New York, when he joined Emergency. In 1972, he was 39 years old and took on the role of Dr. Kelly Brackett, the central character appearing in 128 episodes. With his cool yet responsible demeanor, Brackett became the heart of Rampart Hospital, always the one making life-or-death decisions in each emergency case. Unlike many of his colleagues, Fuller never fell into addiction or family tragedy, but his pain came from watching the emergency. Family fade away one by one. Julie London, Bobby Troup, Michael Norell, and others. In interviews, he admitted this was the price of longevity. Surviving longer than his castmates also meant carrying the memories of their loss. Beyond Emergency, Fuller had a brilliant career in westerns, starring in Wagon Train and Laramie. He was also a familiar face in Dragnet and dozens of other TV series, making him one of America's standout television actors of the 1960s and 1970s. His successful career provided him with steady income and laid the foundation for a comfortable retirement. In 2025, Robert Fuller is 92 years old, but still mentally sharp and in relatively good health. He lives happily in Texas with his third wife and often attends fan conventions and reunions to meet admirers. His net worth is currently estimated at about $5 million, primarily from royalties from classics like Wagon Train and income from fan events. He stands as a rare example of a television star who enjoyed both a long career and peace in his twilight years. 53 years have passed, and Emergency remains a vivid memory for an entire generation. Are you surprised at how many of those familiar faces are now gone forever? And which one left the deepest impression on you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories.